Unit 1 of the textbook. We're going to talk about how sets of construction drawings are organized. Again, remember, construction documents consist of drawings plus specifications. We're going to look at ways that those construction drawings are typically organized. And then as we get further into the semester, we're going to start delving into specific sets of drawings. So why are drawings important to the construction industry? Well, we know that that's a description of what it is. Either if you're the architect, the construction documents, the drawings and the specifications describe what it is, what your design intent is, how you want the building to be built, the structure. If you're the contractor, it tells you what you need to build and make sure that you build according to the architect's intent. So we'll see what's typically in a set of construction documents, how they're made. The textbook says handle prints properly, but nowadays a lot of this work is done virtually. So we do more electronic handling now, at least in a world of COVID, than we do handling of physical documents. So way back when I first started in this business many years ago, we typically call the drawings. Yes, Ayana. Did you have a question?
I'm sorry, I think that was an accident.
Yeah, we used to, way back when, we would call construction drawings blueprints because they were typically white lines on a blue background. Right, this was the process, the reproduction process that was used for a long time. Certainly when I got into this business, that's what was most common, was blueprints. So a blueprint would look something like that. So again, this would have been an architect or a draftsperson drawing by hand, and then a process to reproduce that hand drawing or that original drawing. So again, when I started in this business, I've always been in the facility management business. So owners would have, a storeroom with flat files with the originals of their documents and copies of the documents. And if you wanted to make a new set of drawings, you'd have to pull the originals and send them out someplace to be copied or printed. Right? Again, nowadays this stuff is all happening electronically, but you may still hear the term blueprints. Look at the blueprints. The reason why that term came about, because in fact the drawings were blue, so white text on a blue background. Out of the next, and again, these are representing different improvements in the process of reproducing drawings. So again, with a blueprint, that was a reproduction of a hand drawing. Right, the next thing we got to was a blue line. Again, a blue line would have been a reproduction of a hand drawing. And then we got the black line still in 1975. We didn't have CAD yet, but we might have had a large format Xerox machine. But again, we are reproducing drawings that were drawn by hand. Right, so again, that's what a blue line drawing looks like. So blue text on a white background. Again, a reproduction of something that was drawn by hand. And now we are at, a white print might be, again, a reproduction of a black line reproduction of something drawn by hand. Obviously now we use CAD or computer-aided design, right? A lot of drawing is done on the computer with AutoCAD or BIM or any one of a number of drawing systems. So the drawing is not a reproduction of something drawn by hand. It's a printout of something that's drawn by on a machine. That doesn't mean that people still can't draw drawings by hand. They certainly do. Many, some shops or some offices may still do things that way, but far more prevalent is a use of a computerized drawing tool like AutoCAD or Revit or BIM. And again, depending on the track that you're on, if you're in the architecture track, you'll certainly learn more about these tools and utilize these tools. Right, here's another BIM. You see BIM is a right, AutoCAD drawings tend to be two-dimensional. Once we get into BIM, now we're working in 3 dimensions. And one of the powers of BIM is that now you can coordinate the work of the various trades in 3 dimensions. So it's a little hard to see here, but now we can make sure that the piping and the ductwork and the electrical conduit and the structure, don't conflict with one another. The designer and the designers and the engineers can do that. And it supposedly make things easier for folks to build that in the building, to construct the building, because those conflicts that might get ironed out on the job site are hopefully have been resolved with the set of drawings. Okay, in construction drawings, we generally have 2 types. Orthographic drawing, which we'll see some pictures of that in a minute. Orthographic means that we have taken a 3-dimensional object, right, a building or a house. We've taken a something that will ultimately become 3-dimensional, and we render it in 2 dimensions. So we turn that 3-dimensional object into various views that are each in 2 dimensions. And orthographic drawings are made using orthographic projection, which we'll see in a minute. We can also have various pictorial drawings, right? Renderings. It's often called a rendering. Rendering is a way that we can visualize the structure of the project in what it's going to look like in its finished state. Oftentimes we'll have a rendering. The architect will in the process of design, we'll do a rendering, and we'll show that rendering to the owner and say, here, Mr. or Ms. Owner, here's the building that I'm designing for you. Doesn't it look great? Right? So renderings or pictorial drawings are often used for presentation purposes, right? For the architect to show the owner what the finished building is meant to look like, or for the owner to advertise to some of their stakeholders what it is that they're going to build. So again, in an orthographic projection, again, we're taking a three-dimensional building, and we're going to look at it from different views, from different planes. So if we look at that building or a floor of that building from the top looking down, that produces a floor plan. If we look at the building from the front or the side or the back, those are called elevations. Again, we're making different views of a three-dimensional object. Right, so here's the concept of an orthographic projection, right? We all know what a house looks like, but imagine that we draw a cube around that house, right? A cube has 6 sides, so we look at what does that house look like from each of those vantage points. So again, we're taking a three-dimensional building or a three-dimensional house and turning it into a set of two-dimensional drawings. Right, so those various views, the plans and elevations, each get turned from a three-dimensional object into a two-dimensional view, and those sets of two-dimensional views get put together in a set of drawings. Right, here's another way of thinking about it. So again, that's a three-dimensional house, and now we've reduced it to where might go here, right? So drawing the cube around the house, looking down, we might see a roof plan. Slicing through the middle of the house, right? We get a floor plan, and then we get a set of elevations. Again, once we put it in a set of construction documents, right, we get all the orientations correct, so we don't have to look at something sideways. Right, in a pictorial drawing, right, we're trying to make a more realistic view of what the completed structure will look like. You know, we had trees and shrubs and shading, textures of the materials, landscaping, peoples, automobile, right? We're doing all these things so the owner or stakeholders can visualize what that building might look like in its finished state. Right? We want people, you know, as the designer, as the architect, we want people to see what it is that our building is going to look like. Again, so we just grabbed some images of what renderings might look like. Again, rendering used to be done by hand. Now a lot of these pieces of software can produce rendering by the software. Right, but you see that now we've shown our design in 3 dimensions and added some features, you know, a car, some trees, right, to help people visualize what that completed structure might look like. Right, here's another example of a rendering, right, a overhead view, and it looks like some kind of sports facility or something, I don't know. But again, this would help owners or stakeholders visualize what the completed project is going to look like. Right, again, more examples of rendering. Okay, it's a couple minutes before 8. Why don't we take a 10-minute break or so? So we'll get going here about 7 or 8 minutes after the hour.